Welcome back. We are taking a deeper dive, as we mentioned earlier, into the confirmation hearing process for Ketanji Brown Jackson. Akram Faizer is an associate professor of law at Lincoln Memorial University. He's here to share some insight on what's happened so far and what comes next. It's so good to see you again in person.
Indeed. It's
We've talked to you on Zoom for a while.
I know. It's great to see you. It's great to be here. Actually, your studios are beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, I know one thing we want to discuss today was Senator Marsha Blackburn's comments asking a question to Jackson about defining a woman. How could that come into play in a Supreme Court decision?
I think Senator Blackburn, who's to the right on the political spectrum, is trying to pin down the nominee as to potentially how she might adjudicate a case involving sexual minority status. In other words, will she treat something like transgender status, or give any, or allow people to have discretion to choose their gender identity in a broad way, and make it a constitutional right, by way of example, to choose their gender identity, as opposed to enable the state to require you to abide by your assigned identity at birth. I think that's kind of Senator Blackburn's goal in that questioning, to sort of pin down the nominee and potentially force her to commit to a gender identity at birth scenario. In other words, her hope plausibly was the nominee would say your chromosomal status at birth determines your gender or your sex, which in turn everything should ensue from that. I think that was her goal.
Very interesting. Senators have also wanted to know about Jackson's judicial philosophy. She seemed to say, if I'm correct here, that she doesn't really have one. So let's talk about what judicial philosophy means and the importance of it in something like this.
There are two broad strains of judicial philosophy for purposes of American politics. On the one hand, we have the conservative strain, which says that the law should be applied such that the Constitution should be applied in a way that doesn't allow the judge to amend its meaning for progressive purposes. In other words, apply the rule in a strict manner, and therefore apply the law, and the judge should not have a broad ability to interpret it based on her discretion. That's largely the conservative view and what Republican nominees typically abide by. Typically, the recommended nominees from the Federalist Society take that approach. Liberal justices, and I think Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is in the mainstream of liberal nominees, would take the view that the judge should have some discretion to apply the Constitution in an evolving way based on changed circumstances, such that the judge herself could help facilitate justice in her adjudication.
That makes sense.
And that's basically the dispute there.
Thank you for that explanation. We appreciate that. Got to get to this one. We saw a lot of emotion from Senator Lindsey Graham, not about Jackson herself per se, but about the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation. So why focus on him during this confirmation?
It's hard to say. I think, to be fair by Senator Graham, he was very fair by Democratic nominees under President Obama. So unlike the bulk of the Republican caucus, he voted for Justice Sotomayor, he voted for Justice Kagan, and I think he took it very personally when he felt that the Democratic members of the Judiciary Committee did not give Justice Kavanaugh a fair hearing, or treated him as being guilty of sexual assault as opposed to being accused of sexual assault, to deny him a confirmation vote. And I think plausibly his emotion is, I think he took that very personally, and I think he feels that Republican senators are being accused of being reflexively partisan when the same accusation is not leveled against Democratic senators. I'm not in his mind. I don't understand exactly. Him and I have no personal relationship.
But that's your take.
That's my take.
That's your take. What's your take on this? Do you think that Jackson will be confirmed?
I think so. I think it'll be a narrower vote than we saw for, let's say, Justices Sotomayor or Kagan, previous Democratic nominees, but I think it'll be a vote, and she very well might get a few Republican votes. By way of example, Senator Graham voted for her to be on the D.C. Court of Appeals. He may well vote for her again. So did Susan Collins of Maine, voted for her. She may vote for her again. So it's very likely she gets well above the 51 vote threshold to be confirmed.
If she does, she'll make history. Thanks
Absolutely,
for coming in.
absolutely, yeah.
All right. As
Thanks.
always, good to see you.
Great to see you. Thank
Bo.
you.